Paleo Runner podcast is devoted to finding better ways to live, run, train, and eat. I'm your host, Aaron Olson. You can find more information by going to paleorunner.org. If you enjoy the show, please go to iTunes and leave a review. Search for Paleo Runner in iTunes and click ratings and reviews. You can also follow me on facebook.com/runpaleo or on Twitter @runpaleo. I wanted to take a minute to let you know about a product I've been using called 3Fuel. 3Fuel is a sports drink that gives you fat, protein, and carbohydrates to use as a fuel source. Unlike sugary sports drinks, 3Fuel gets absorbed slowly into your bloodstream to give you sustained energy throughout your workout. If you'd like to give it a try, you can get 10% off by using the coupon code 3FOLSON. Go to paleorunner.org and click 3Fuel at the top of the page. If you're listening through the podcast app on iPhone, click the link displayed on the app right now. My guest today is Stephen Wright. Stephen runs a website called scdlifestyle.com, which is devoted to helping people naturally heal their gut and get relief from symptoms of Crohn's, colitis, and IBS. Steve, it's great to have you on the show today. Thanks so much for taking the time to be with me.
Aaron, thanks so much for reaching out. I'm excited to chat today.
So, Steve, tell me a little bit about your background. How did you get started with SCD?
Yeah, we could talk about that probably for an hour, so I'll keep it to a Cliff Notes version. But basically, Jordan Reasoner is kind of like my partner in crime. He's the guy that I run SCD Lifestyle with. We met in college. We were good friends. He has celiac disease, and he did not get better on the gluten-free diet. In fact, he got worse, and all the doctors just kept saying that there was nothing they could do. It was all his fault. So he found the specific carbohydrate diet, the SCD diet, through a natural practitioner. And he went on it. His diarrhea of like 3 or 4 years stopped within 7 days. And, he starts telling me all these things. And so at that time, I was doing a pretty stressful consulting gig, doing a lot of flying, happy hour style culture. And I was having really bad alternating constipation, diarrhea, IBS stuff with lots of gas and bloating. And it just reached to a point where it was affecting my work. It was affecting my brain. And so I kind of reached out to him one night where I was just broken, kind of on the toilet all night. And he's like, man, you got to switch your diet. You got to try this. And so I hemmed and hawed about this, changing over, cooking all my foods. I thought this was just like a big thing. I didn't know how to cook. And finally took the plunge January 1st, 2010. And seriously, within like 4 days, my all day long gas and bloating was gone. My bowel habits were really regulated pretty fastly after that. And then, since then, it's been 3 years or 3 or 4 years now of really kind of unlocking new levels of health. I think that typically people don't know how sick they are. Like we humans are just amazing at getting along and being at a certain level of health. And then when you start to unlock these new levels of health, I'm just the type of person that I'm like, ooh, I want more. Like, what else is possible? And so, since then, I've been working through things with, parasite infections and adrenal fatigue and brain chemistry and all types of things. And every time you go up that next level, I've just unlocked even new potential of energy and well-being and things like that. So, but it all starts with food. I really feel that the paleo, SCD, real food movement is the base of the pyramid. And, you have to build your house on a solid foundation. So if you don't have the food component in place, everything else will crumble at some point.
Mm-hmm. So were your symptoms ever as bad as Jordan's? I mean, I've heard your story before, and I think Jordan was like almost on the brink of like almost dying, right? And he turned his health around as well within a few weeks.
Yeah. He was writing out his will. I mean, he was very emancipated. He was really in a bad place. And so, it stopped. The specific carbohydrate diet is really a great tool for anyone with digestive issues. And it really started to turn around and stop his digestive symptoms within the first week. And he just, went step by step after that. It's taken him, again, several years to really get extremely healthy as well. I was never that low, I guess you could say, health-wise. I was more like just every time I ate, I would have awful bloating and cramping and gas. And then a few times a week, I would just be like, have like diarrhea a few times, all day, or I might be constipated for a few days here or there. Just kind of all dependent on what I was eating and what my stress levels were. But the always constant was like burping, gas, and bloating. And it was just like, it was affecting my ability. Sometimes it would be so painful. I mean, I feel like almost everyone has had at least one instance of this in their life where the gas is so bad that you can't even think. It's like the pain wiring in your brain is just going off like a Christmas tree, and you can't think about anything else except for how bad the pain is in your stomach. And that would happen to me for about an hour after every meal I ate. date. And so when that's happening, you can't enjoy a date. You can't go to a client meeting and help someone and then be productive after that because you're so stuck in this realm of pain in your body. So I was lucky that I didn't get that bad. However, I had reached a breaking point in my own life where it was affecting me so much that I was like, you know what, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to get rid of this because I can't endure another, 60 years or 80 years of this in my life.
So the diet is called SCD, and that stands for Specific Carbohydrate Diet. What does that mean? What's the basis for it?
Yeah, so the specific carbohydrate diet started with a guy, Dr. Sidney Haas, back in the early 1910s, 1920s. He was looking for ways to treat celiacs, and he started experimenting with carbohydrate malabsorption. And then he passed away in the 50s, and then Elaine Goschel kind of picked it up. She was a biochemist who had a daughter with ulcerative colitis, and her daughter wasn't responding to traditional methods. So they found Dr. Haas. Dr. Haas put her on specific carbohydrate diet, and Elaine has really popularized it with her book, Breaking the Vicious Cycle. And in that book, she really kind of details the diet and breaks it down much more clear than what Dr. Haas did. And basically, it's the idea that in the brush or in the small intestine, there's a brush border, which is, I'm sure a lot of people have heard of this before, but it looks like shag carpet. You have all these little hairs that are villi. And these hairs split carbohydrate molecules that are long into shorter absorption. So they split polysaccharides down to monosaccharides in order to digest them. And so whenever there's inflammation or damage from, like, for instance, celiac disease is when the shag carpet is like run down into Berber carpet, like it's gone. That's the diagnosis of celiac disease. So if you lose those hairs, those villi, you're not going to be able to absorb carbohydrates as well. And so what they kind of figured out through trial and error and what was known back then in the literature was that they needed for people who had digestive concerns to only allow them to eat carbohydrates that were already basically pre-broken down. In other words, they were monosaccharides only. So the specific carbohydrate diet is based around removing polysaccharides and disaccharides. That way, any intestinal injury that's happening will, eating a diet that doesn't have those in it, you'll be able to absorb those carbohydrates, which you weren't absorbing before. And also what happens is when you can't absorb the poly and the disaccharides, so those long molecules, they end up sitting around in your gut and they begin to ferment and they encourage bacterial overgrowth and yeast overgrowth, which just kind of completes this really awful cycle of illness where when those things overgrow in the small intestine when they're not supposed to be there, they increase inflammation and leaky gut, and just the cycle sort of continues to repeat itself.
So you mentioned a lot of things there about how it sounds like carbohydrates, they don't get broken down well, and then they travel down through the gut where they can be fermented by bacteria in lower parts of the gut and cause cramping and distress. Is that the basic idea?
A little bit. It's actually that the carbohydrates, because they're not being absorbed right away in the small intestine, they'll encourage bacterial growth right away in the small intestine. Now, our small intestines have a very small amount, or they should have a very small amount of microorganism growth. And so when the carbohydrates get malabsorbed, they encourage big population growth in the small intestine. And instead, there should be big populations in the colon only.
Okay. So someone might be listening to this and thinking, shouldn't you guys have gone to see a doctor? Why are you trying this natural approach? What is it about, did you ever see a doctor? And what is it about the natural SCD approach that you liked?
Yeah, I mean, I got diagnosed with IBS like 6 different times, told to eat more grains and take Metamucil and eat fiber, or maybe try some pharmaceutical drugs. But basically, I was told that this is what the hand I was dealt genetically, and I was just going to have these issues for the rest of my life. And I just chose not to accept that. And in my opinion, that was an unacceptable answer. I knew that there had to be somebody else out there who had solved this issue. Somebody else. I mean, there's like 7 billion people on this planet. Somebody else must have figured this out before. And I'm not about to live for 100 years or something with this issue. So that's when started, talking with more holistic, functional medicine style people. And, the specific carbohydrate diet also restricts grains because of their carbohydrate issue. Its big differences between paleo are that it allows fermented dairy that doesn't have any lactose in it. And then it also allows some soaked and properly prepared legumes, so kind of like Weston A. Price. So it's sort of a hybrid between Weston A. Price and the paleo diet. However, our version, SCD Lifestyles, take on it, and what we've been trying to carry the torch after Elaine Goschel passed away in the 2000s is that we really reserve those legumes for when you're symptom free. And so, I mean, I think anybody knows that when you go paleo, you feel a lot better. And so, again, like I said, I think it starts with real food. food, and the results speak for themselves. The downside of not eating some foods is nothing. I mean, what's the side effects of not eating something? I don't see it.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned it was kind of ironic that you went to see the doctor and he recommended things like more fiber and healthy whole grains, which were probably just the opposite of what your gut needed. It's kind of funny how that works. It was probably making you worse.
Yeah. I think for a while Metamucil helped cover up the issue and allowed to have a little more regularity with my stools, but it didn't fix any of the bloating, cramping, and obviously adding more grains did nothing to help the situation. And I think of doctors like school teachers. I really, my heart goes out to school teachers in America and also doctors in America, because school teachers, a lot of people look at them and just, I feel for them because they're stuck in a system where most of them that I know really want to impart some awesome knowledge and change lives through the kids that they teach, but they're stuck teaching a curriculum that's handed down to them from some government people who decided that's exactly what every single kid should learn, and this is the environment that every single kid should sit in, and they get fed this substandard meals, and they don't have any money to go out and buy the supplies to help the kid that might have special needs or the kid who's might be excelling, and so they have all these limitations. Their books are 10 years old, and I think the doctors, you could look at, in my opinion, you look at doctors, they're in the same situation. They get handed a curriculum from the insurance companies that they must follow, or the only source of knowledge that's free to them is typically given by pharmaceutical companies, and they're stuck in this system where they have to have certain diagnosis codes so people will get the treatments that are available, and they don't really get any nutrition training. And so my heart goes out to doctors and teachers. I think they're really stuck in a system. These are people who typically go into these fields looking to make a difference and help people, and I don't really fault them. I just think that the system in itself is kind of faulty. It's broken.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned a minute ago that you were dealing with terrible gas and cramping. When I went on a paleo style diet, I found that I almost had no gas anymore. How much gas is normal? And will the SCD get rid of gas?
That's a really interesting question, and I'm not sure there's a true answer to that, because when you modify your diet, you're modifying the substrate in which gas could be produced from. And so with every bite of food, we are choosing which microorganisms are growing in our guts. And so when we choose certain foods like starches or grains or something, polysaccharides, we're choosing to feed populations of microorganisms that have more byproducts of gas. When you reduce that substrate, you have less available, basically food to make gas from. So I don't necessarily know that there's an answer for how much gas is normal for a paleo person versus an SCD versus the standard diet person. But I would say that in general, for myself, what I've noticed, and from the people that I talk to who've really done their homework on getting their health in line, is that if they do have a little bit of gas from day to day, it's not smelly, it's easy to pass, it's not hurting their stomach, those types of things. I know that, I went from having gas 24 hours a day, very stinky, very painful, to as long as I keep my stress levels low and, I'm eating paleo SCD, I basically hardly have any gas. And when I do, it definitely doesn't smell, and it's not ruining my life or anything.
Nice. So what is it about processed foods and grains that people might think, well, it's super healthy, why wouldn't I eat this? Is there like an evolutionary perspective similar to paleo with the specific carbohydrate diet? Or what was it originally that made them think, hey, let's get rid of these carbs, or the grains, I guess?
Yeah, that's a great question. The grains were thrown out. Again, SCD was really a diet by way of trial and error back then, because we didn't know about the wheat issues and the ancestry issues until the last 20 or 30 years, maybe 40 years if you want to go back that far. And the origins, like I said, of SCD were like 1910, 1920. And what grains have going against them is that they're really big sources of polysaccharides. And so they just found that SCD's really been a diet of trial and error for people with digestive issues. And they just knew that when they gave people more grains, they had more issues. And so over time, the diet kind of evolved with that. And so also with the carbohydrate issue, they got thrown out. Mm-hmm. But I think when you throw in, what we know now about the protein structures of grains, what we know now about the individual variants of your ability to digest them and modern lifestyle, if you want to throw all that stuff in there, I think it's just an overwhelming truck. Like if you put everything on a scale, one side of that scale is sitting on the ground, the other side's, way up in the air, and the side way up in the air says, hey, don't eat these things, dummy.
Mm-hmm. How long does it take for someone to find relief after trying the SCD diet?
I think most people begin to notice changes in their symptomology in the first 2 weeks. And there are, just like there's a gradient of responses to paleo, there's a gradient of responses to SCD. And there's a large majority of people that are going to see benefits right away, but there's always like a bell curve of reactions. Some people might be healed in a week, at least that's how they feel. There's going to be a large group in the middle that's going to see some relief, and it's going to be awesome. It's the best that they've had in a while, and it's just going to keep getting better and better. There's also going to be a group at the end, the long tail, that's not necessarily going to see massive results in the first week or two. And these are typically people who need to make additional modifications, such as if they're actually doing SCD with dairy, they need to pull dairy out, or maybe they have an egg allergy, they need to pull egg out. Maybe they are so digestively broken that they need a supplement like digestive enzymes. That's very common. And so if those people don't know about those little tweaks that they could make, they might write off SCD as not working, when in the reality is they were only 1 or 2 changes away from feeling pretty amazing.
So are there some tweaks that you've found in your diet that have helped you?
Yeah, so in the beginning, I totally needed digestive enzymes, and then I really needed betaine HCl. I have low stomach acid, and so what I was noticing is when I went to this diet where I was eating meat a lot more and eggs a lot more, is I was burping all the time after meals and still had a little bit of gas. The stools weren't awesome, type number 4s in the Bristol stool chart. And so once I added in digestive enzymes and betaine HCl, my digestion went up to a whole new level. Since then, I've kind of done away with enzymes because my own body has responded in a way that I don't need them anymore. However, I do still use HCl. And I think for a lot of people, they're suffering from both of those issues as well.
So you use HCl. Is that something you take before you eat meat, or how does that work?
I actually take it after I'm done with a meal. It's betaine HCl, so hydrochloric acid. Basically, you're supplementing to raise up your hydrochloric acid in your stomach. And so you want to have proper stomach acid because pH is the governor for the rest of the digestive system. So when the pH rises to certain levels, that's when the pH gets down to like a 2 or a 3, that's when the stomach dumps into the small intestine, and then bile salts and other things come into the bolus of food at that point in the small intestine to raise the pH. And as it goes along the small intestine, the pH changes until it's ready to get dumped into the colon, or into the large intestine, excuse me. And so if you have the pH wrong from the beginning, you're really kind of setting yourself up to not have good digestion. You're shooting yourself in the foot. It's kind of like if you don't chew your food properly, you're shooting your whole digestion in the foot right from step 1. Mm-hmm. And so when you have a protein-rich meal, it's gonna be more of a need for higher acid levels to start to break down that protein. And so I needed more of the HCl for high protein meals. Now, if I have some fruit or something like that, I don't take any HCl.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, a lot of people listening to this are endurance athletes, and they're interested in a paleo-style diet to heal their digestive issues. And it sounds like the SCD, that could really be helpful for them if they're dealing with some of these things. I know for myself, as an endurance athlete, I was always told I had to have a high-carb diet, eat lots of whole grains, and I would always have stomach issues the next day for a race or something. And finally, I started learning more about the paleo diet, and then I learned a little bit about the SCD diet, and really it helped heal my digestion. What have you worked with any athletes who have had success trying this diet? I mean, some people might think that you're basically just cutting out all carbohydrates. Is that true? Tell me about some of the foods that you can eat.
Yeah, no, you're definitely not cutting out all carbohydrates. I mean, the big difference between paleo and SCD is that you're getting rid of starch as well. So starch is not allowed on SCD because it's a polysaccharide and needs to be further broken down in the small intestine. So that's a big change. And foods that you can eat. You can eat all of the meats you want, pretty much all vegetables, all fruits, nuts. Again, you can eat like fermented dairy on SCD and fermented cheese, those types of things. So it's super close to the paleo diet. Mm-hmm. And yes, worked with lots of athletes, endurance athletes, for instance, who, we have like a pro cyclist who just emailed me the other day. I think he's going to put up a post on our blog some point at sclifestyle.com. Just detailing his journey, because a lot of athletes endurance athletes anyways have been sold a bill of goods for the last 20 years that they need carbs and they need lots of carbs. And the truth is that while there is a variance to how many carbs you need just based on your genotype and just kind of how you are and where your health's at, the majority of people would be doing better with a higher fat, lower carb style of eating, which you can easily do with SCD. And SCD doesn't throw out all carbs. It totally allows actually glucose and fructose, but not fructose as in, soda pop, but there's actually fructose in fruits and that kind of thing. So, I mean, you still have carbohydrates in your diet when you're eating SCD. It's just monosaccharides, and there's no limit to how many you could have. But in general, if you were thinking about tolerances of carbohydrates, I would say that most people eating SCD are under 200 grams of carbohydrates per day. Somewhere between 100 and 200, I would say, is probably the average SCDer's diet for carbohydrates.
So you mentioned there that it's a slightly higher fat diet, or that fat is okay. Are you telling people that they have to clog their arteries to try this diet? I'm just kidding, Steve. What is people's response when you say, you can start including some higher fat to fuel your energy levels?
Yeah, no, you're bringing up a really common fear. It's kind of like the bill of goods that was sold to endurance athletes that they needed to eat pasta before every race. So, the general public has been sold this bill of goods that they eat fat, they're going to get, clogged arteries and die of a heart attack. And recent research, including the Harvard Medical School, had put out a paper, I think a year ago, or at least 9 months ago now, that said there's no link between dietary fat intake and heart disease. Like, there's nothing there. We were wrong. Everybody else is wrong. Forget about that. So I think that, there's plenty of books out there like The Great Cholesterol Con. If people are really interested in that, they should go read these books, like get educated on this topic. But yes, I'm saying fats are good for you. And there are specific fats that are much better than others. I don't consider margarine a fat. Margarine and those type of oils are plastic. So I'm not talking about those when I'm talking about fat. I'm talking about animal fats, not, industrial seed oils definitely are not good either. Those are like cottonseed oils and rapeseed oils and canola oil, those types of things. Those are not considered healthy in my book either. But eat all the coconut oil and animal protein or animal fats, that you want to eat, including olive oil, because that's really, if you're going for a nutrient-rich diet, you're getting 9 calories per gram of fat versus 4 calories for a gram of protein or for carbohydrates. So when it comes to just bang for the buck, fat's the better choice.
Yeah, I found that too in my running, is that I initially had avoided fats or in my earlier years because I thought it was going to cause GI distress or something like that. That's what all the articles were saying is due to high carb diet. But actually, fats have been fine on my digestion. What is your experience with digestibility of fats been working with your clients?
It's a great question. And this is where this whole human element of the long scale and how many reactions there could be to every type of food. And so there are people who do react to fats. It's called fat malabsorption. And they literally just do not have the digestive capability in their current health to digest fats properly. So if they eat, a bunch of coconut oil or MCT oil, they might run to the bathroom right away and have diarrhea. Or that might happen a couple times to them every time they eat a meal that's higher in fat, like an avocado or something for a snack. And so those people are definitely someone who needs digestive enzymes. That's what's really going to help them with their fat malabsorption. And then over time, as they actually heal up their gut, they'll do just fine with fat. Think about it. Every single one of our cells has fat molecules attached to it. All of our hormones, cholesterol based. So, we need fat molecules just to make up our cell walls. We need cholesterol in our diet to have proper hormones. So, for those who can't digest fat, I would say go to digestive enzymes and then, find a qualified practitioner or somebody who can maybe do some extra digestive testing to figure out why your digestive system's not able to handle these fats.
Mm-hmm. Stephen, you mentioned in the beginning that after you went on this diet and you started healing your gut, that you started noticing a lot of other benefits that you were getting into. Can you mention some of those other things that you noticed as you started regaining your health?
Yeah, so better sleep. My skin, I've had acne for like my entire life, and nothing took it away. I did everything except for Accutane, and my skin has just gotten steadily better. I lost weight. Energy through the roof compared to what it was. And another big thing for me was just mental stability. As I got sicker and sicker, it didn't start right away, but as somebody loses their digestive ability, sooner or later the brain seems to go too because of the gut-brain axis. And latest research and theories are kind of that if you have unchecked inflammation and damage in the gut, you'll have that same unchecked inflammation and damage in the brain. And so, depression now is being thought of as an inflammatory disorder in a new theory that's gaining a lot of traction. And so that's kind of why a lot of the antidepressant drugs don't ever seem to cure anybody, and that they seem to stop working over time for a lot of these people. It's because it's probably not an issue with, it could be an issue with dopamine and serotonin, but that's not the number one issue. And so those drugs just kind of buy some time and don't actually address the root cause, which is inflammation. So I suffered from some pretty bad depressive states before I got starting to turn my health around, as well as anxiety came on. Like when I got the sickest, right before I made the switch, I had started having a few panic attacks, and I didn't even know what that was. Like until you had one of those, I don't think you can fully explain it to someone, where you just cannot move, cannot breathe, and it was just like when I was just walking to work. I mean, I've done these things like a million times and it just came out of nowhere. So, I don't have those issues anymore. And I'm not saying that overnight that stuff just changes like a light bulb, but it does go away as you go to another level of health, and it starts with food.
Steve, do you mind running the listeners through, they're probably interested in what you eat on a typical day. Do you mind sharing a bit about your daily menu?
Yeah, sure. So if I'm eating breakfast, I'll have like 6 whole eggs and a bunch of sauerkraut on top. And so I always like to get some fermented food in there just to keep the probiotics high in my diet. And eggs, awesome source of nutrients. So that would be a typical meal if I have breakfast. If I don't have breakfast, sometimes I'll do like the bulletproof coffee method, where I'll put in some grass-fed butter, MCT oil in my coffee, and kind of wait till noon before I have some food or something. At lunch, it's typically this. So I'm a single guy. I'm not, unless I'm cooking for, someone in my life, I'm the only one eating the food. So I cook in big bulk batches, and I eat the same thing for lunch and dinner. So I'll typically have leftovers from the dinner before at lunch, and that could be like salmon and veggies, or like flank steak, and maybe some vegetables as well. Just because of my lifestyle right now, sometimes I can't necessarily always get access to the best quality food, so I do buy a lot of frozen, like organic veggies, and just kind of cook those instead of trying to get everything fresh, because I'm just in an area right now that doesn't have awesome access to really good vegetable products. I'll typically have a little bit of fruit lying around the house, just whatever's in season that I can find around here at the farmer's market. And, so basically most of my meals, lunch and dinner, are like a protein source, whether it's grass-fed meat or, not grass-fed if I can't find it or can't get access to it, but wild-caught seafood, pasture-raised chicken, pork, that type of thing, and then a vegetable or two. And, if you're following SCD, you wouldn't do this, but every once in a while, I'll add in some starch, like some white potato or sweet potato.
Okay. You mentioned sauerkraut there. Can you just use any kind of sauerkraut at the grocery store, or is this something that you have to ferment yourself?
No, yeah, you have to, excuse me. Yes, you can ferment it yourself, but you can buy it in the store. And so when you buy it in the store, there's 2 types of sauerkraut. There's the kind that's fresh and it's refrigerated, and the kind that's not. It's often on the shelves. And if you look at if you look at the labels, what you'll find is the shelf-stable stuff has vinegar in it, and it actually wasn't fermented. So don't want that stuff. But you can find pretty much anywhere in the country these days, you can find actually fermented sauerkraut in the fridge section, the refrigerated section of your local health food store. So just check the label, make sure there's no vinegar on the back, and you should be good to go.
Okay. Another thing that I've seen promoted on your website is something called SCD yogurt. What is that?
So SCD yogurt is a way to consume dairy and probiotics. I mean, yogurt, it's going to be pretty high in fat and protein and low in carbs. So it's a great source of calories as well as probiotics. And SCD yogurt is different from commercial yogurt, everything that you buy in the store, because you make it at home and you ferment it for 24 hours. And so when you ferment it that long, the bacteria actually eat up all the lactose. And lactose can cause people issues from both a lactose reactionary process problem, but also because it's a disaccharide. And so again, SCD doesn't allow the consumption of disaccharide. So when you ferment dairy products for 24 hours, the lactose is basically gone. You're left with this really high fat, high protein yogurt that's filled with a ton of probiotics. And I think that's a really healthy option. Obviously, I would totally encourage the consumption of these dairy products from pasture-raised cows that are humanely raised, not just going and buying the cheapest gallon of milk at your store, because I don't necessarily feel like that milk is the proper milk to go ahead and make your yogurt from.
Mm-hmm. And is that a hard process to do, or is it something that anyone can do at home?
No, it's actually really easy. I mean, the hardest thing is that typically you need like a yogurt maker. And so you just got to buy one of those. I think they're like $40 or so. And it's really pretty easy. You just kind of heat up the milk and then put in the yogurt starter, put it in your yogurt maker and set a timer, and you're pretty much ready to go, 24 hours later. So it's not a super hard process. It's just like a lot of things in real food eating where you have to plan for it and just do it.
Awesome. Well, Steve, it's been great talking with you today. Thanks so much for sharing with us, and I hope if there's listeners out there that are dealing with gut issues that they can check out your site. Where's the best place to get more information about SCD Lifestyle?
The best place is on the blog there at scdlifestyle.com. I think we have over 280 articles now over the past 3.5 years for free. So there's a ton of help there. We also have like a free intro guide that it's a chapter from our ebook about the specific carbohydrate diet and how to implement it as fast and easy as possible, and also kind of addresses some of the issues that people have with tweaking it and customizing it. And so you can get that for free at the website. And then if anyone's already been on like paleo and they're still having issues, or they tried SCD and they're still having some issues from endurance, they're not recovering, Jordan and I do one-on-one health consulting, and we're trained in functional medicine. We're definitely not doctors, and we're just doing consulting, but we do work with a lot of people that have ongoing gut issues, even though they've switched their food over and don't see results. So that's, joining our consulting would be the next best step for those people.
Awesome. Well, Steve, thanks again. It was great talking with you today.
Yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity, Aaron.
You've been listening to another episode of Paleo Runner Podcast. For more information, go to paleorunner.org. Thanks for listening.